Chapter 1. Welcome to GRIMSTONE. The walls started humming 3 nights before the blackout. The first person to notice was a little boy on level 8. Not the guards, not the inmates, not the technicians buried beneath Black Hollow Mountain, staring at pressure monitors and pretending numbers still meant control. A child noticed first. 7 years old, skinny wrists, 1 missing front tooth, the kind of kid who slept light because nobody born under the lid ever really learned how to rest. His name was Junie Bell. He lived in apartment 8C with his grandmother, his baby sister, and a mother who worked laundry rotation down in medical sector washing stains from uniforms nobody officially bled in. Level 8 smelled like grease, bleach, mildew, and old cigarettes. That night smelled mostly like fried fish. Somebody halfway down the hall cooked from a dented skillet balanced over a portable burner, while 2 old men argued over dominoes beside the stairwell. "You cheating." "I'm winning. That's different." "Your ugly ass always got excuses." Their laughter drifted through the corridor between leaking pipes and distant elevator groans. A woman nearby braided her daughter's hair in the doorway of 8F while humming gospel under her breath. Plastic beads clicked softly every time she parted another row. Somewhere behind thin apartment walls, a baby laughed. For 1 small hour, GRIMSTONE almost sounded normal. Junie lay awake, staring at water stains spreading across the ceiling. The stains changed shape sometimes. Everybody knew that. Nobody talked about it. One looked like a horse. One looked like a hand. One looked like a mouth if he stared too long. He stopped staring. Then the wall beside him made a sound. Not loud, worse. The vibration moved through the concrete first, then the bed frame, then his ribs. Junie sat up slowly. The television in the corner glowed blue, without sound. His grandmother slept in her chair, holding a rosary in one hand and a kitchen knife beneath the blanket beside her thigh. The wall hummed again. Long, low, patient. Junie climbed from the mattress and pressed his ear against the concrete. The sound underneath reminded him of somebody breathing through clogged lungs. Slow, careful, like whatever lived inside the walls didn't want to wake anybody yet. His fingertips touched peeling paint. The wall vibrated once beneath his hand. Junie jerked back immediately. "Grandma?" Her eyes opened instantly. "Old people in GRIMSTONE did not wake slow." "What? The wall singing again?" For a second she didn't move. Then she listened. The apartment stayed quiet except for hallway laughter, rain against sealed windows, and distant pipes knocking somewhere below. Then, his grandmother stood so fast the chair legs scraped the floor hard enough to wake the baby. "Get your sister." Junie frowned sleepily. "Why?" "Now." Something in her voice made him obey immediately. By morning, 3 more residents reported headaches. A woman on Sector D forgot her daughter's name for almost 20 minutes and cried so hard afterward she vomited in the sink. An old man stabbed his television with a screwdriver because he claimed the weather reporter smiled too long without blinking. A teenager punched through a bathroom mirror after hearing somebody whisper his name from the drain. Nobody connected the incidents. Inside GRIMSTONE, people stopped connecting things a long time ago. Patterns made fear. Fear made curiosity. Curiosity got people swallowed. Outside the prison city, rain hammered against the glass veil. Lightning crawled across the massive canopy overhead, illuminating the city beneath in quick, violent flashes. Concrete towers, industrial smoke, floodlights, rust, thousands of windows glowing weak yellow through rainfall. Walls rising so high they disappeared into the underside of the sealed sky. The lid vibrated faintly above all of it. Most residents stopped looking up years ago. You stop noticing cages once they become weather. Down in Market Row, beneath level 6, old soul music drifted through blown speakers, while vendors sold noodles, cigarettes, batteries, and hot foil-wrapped cornbread beside steaming sewer grates. Children kicked a half-flat basketball through puddles while exhausted workers shuffled home beneath flickering lights. A couple slow danced outside a liquor stall while waiting for rain to calm down. The man held the woman carefully, like the city hadn't already taken enough from both of them. Far below GRIMSTONE, beneath collapsed mine tunnels, buried railways, flooded churches, forgotten streets and chambers, sealed decades earlier. Something shifted. Not awake, not yet. Just enough movement to remind the world above it existed. The vibration rolled upward through pipes, steel, water lines, elevator shafts, teeth, bones, walls. Not enough for panic. Just enough to unsettle dogs. Just enough to wake babies screaming. Just enough to make old people stop mid-sentence. The prison adjusted around it instinctively. Lights flickered across Block C for exactly 4 seconds. A woman began crying in her sleep 3 floors underground. Black mold spread another inch across a ceiling inside medical sector. Nobody noticed. Inside an abandoned maintenance office, a dead emergency broadcast channel quietly activated itself. Static crackled through wires nobody had touched in years. Then silence, then a voice. Soft, curious. "Can you hear me this time?" The transmission lasted less than 2 seconds before cutting out. Officially, nothing happened that night. No riots, no breaches, no deaths, no pressure alerts. Nothing worth reporting. But old residents felt it anyway. The stayers always did. Miss Eula sat beside her apartment window on level 11, smoking menthols while rain crawled across the glass veil overhead. Her apartment smelled like cat food, cigarette ash, camphor oil, and beef stew simmering low on the stove because hungry neighbors always knocked eventually. 3 cats slept near the radiator. A 4th stared toward the ceiling. The humming rolled through the walls again. Miss Eula froze. Not fear, recognition. Her cigarette ash trembled loose onto her nightgown. The cats lifted their heads at the same time. "No," she whispered. The rhythm came again. 3 vibrations. Pause. 3 more. Like knocking, like something beneath the prison was checking if the world above still remembered it. Miss Eula crushed the cigarette into a chipped saucer and stood too quickly. Her knees cracked loud in the apartment. One of the cats hissed toward the hallway. "Hush," she muttered automatically. But her own voice shook. She shuffled toward the front door, undid 3 locks, slid back the chain, and opened it. The hallway lights flickered weak yellow. Humidity coated the walls enough to shine. Somebody had taped a child's birthday drawing beside the elevator. Blue sky, yellow sun, green grass, no lid. Miss Eula stared at the drawing longer than she meant to. Halfway down the corridor, the black veil mold had climbed onto the ceiling. Further than she had ever seen before. The growth pulsed faintly beneath peeling paint. Not breathing, close enough. Apartment doors slowly opened along the hallway. A man holding a baseball bat. A tired mother carrying a crying baby. Teenagers, children. Junie Bell clutching his little sister sleepily against his chest. Nobody spoke. They all stared upward. The prison hummed around them. Deep, patient listening. And somewhere, beyond GRIMSTONE's walls, Highway 88 disappeared beneath fog as a black SUV crossed into Maple County for the first time in years. Behind the wheel sat Kade Mercer. He had not slept in 31 hours. The SUV smelled like stale coffee, wet canvas, gun oil, and the faint lavender lotion Evelyn used before bed. The bottle had been empty for months. The smell remained anyway. A photograph sat wedged beside the dashboard. Evelyn sitting barefoot on the kitchen counter, smiling toward the camera with cloudy eyes and burn marks on the stove behind her. The rice had burned that night. She laughed so hard she cried. Kade remembered being irritated at the time. Now he would have burned every meal for the rest of his life just to hear that laugh again. He looked at the photo too long before forcing his attention back toward the road. Rain smeared across the windshield beneath weak headlights. The forest thickened gradually around Highway 88 until the road felt swallowed by trees. No road signs, no reflectors. No traffic, only wet asphalt disappearing into fog. The GPS spun uselessly, recalculating, then no route available. "Yeah," Kade muttered quietly. "Sounds about right." The dashboard clock blinked, 3:33 a.m. Then the radio burst alive in static. A distorted voice whispered through the speakers, "If you hearing this, you already too close." Kade stiffened. The transmission vanished immediately. Only rain remained, heavy against the windshield. The hum rolled through the SUV floor. Kade felt it in his ribs, his teeth, the base of his skull. The windshield fogged from the inside. He wiped it with his sleeve and froze, fingerprints pressed against the passenger side window. Long, thin, already there. Kade looked beside him instantly. Empty seat, gym bag, rain jacket, loaded handgun, nothing else. The fingerprints slid downward anyway. Slow, patient. Kade jerked the wheel slightly. Tires hissed across wet pavement. "Get a hold of yourself." His voice sounded muted inside the vehicle, like the fog outside had entered with him. Another burst of static exploded through the radio. Then jazz, warm trumpet. crackling vinyl. An old man's tired voice spoke softly over the music. Good evening, night travelers. You listening to Rotline Radio 88.1, the frequency that hurts. Kade's stomach tightened. He turned the volume knob down. The radio got louder, road getting hard to recognize. The windshield wipers slowed by themselves. That happens close to the county. Kade switched the radio off completely. The voice continued anyway, calm, almost sympathetic. You should have turned around at the tree line. Lightning flashed overhead. For one impossible second, dozens of people stood between the trees, watching the SUV pass. Still, silent, then darkness returned. The woods were empty again. Kade slammed the brakes instinctively. His pulse hammered. He sat breathing hard while rain battered the windshield. Every few miles he still caught himself almost speaking out loud before remembering nobody sat beside him anymore. In through the nose. Hold, out slow. That was Evelyn's rule whenever his temper started climbing. Don't let your body decide things before you do. Kade gripped the steering wheel harder. Part of him still blamed her for going back, for trusting the hearing, for believing she could help people inside the county. Another part blamed himself for letting her go alone. The worst part still missed the directorate sometimes. The order, the certainty. Back when monsters stayed inside reports and concrete walls still acted like walls. The radio softened. Most folks don't see them first time entering. Kade wrapped his hand around the handgun beneath the jacket. Cold metal steadied him. Who the fuck is this? Static crackled. Question ain't who I am. The jazz slowed, warped like the record itself was sinking underwater. Question is why the county finally let you in. The vibration intensified beneath the SUV. Kade realized it wasn't coming from the vehicle. It was coming from underground. The road curved sharply left through fog. Then lightning illuminated the horizon. Kade stopped breathing. The lid, miles wide, a colossal crystal dome stretched across the darkness beyond the forest. Rain crawled across its surface, while support towers disappeared upward into storm clouds. Lightning spread through fractures inside the canopy, like cracks beneath skin. And underneath it, lights, an entire city glowing dim gold beneath the sealed sky. GRIMSTONE, concrete towers, industrial smoke, floodlights, red warning beacons. Walls rising impossibly high around the perimeter. The prison city looked endless. The hum rolled through the forest again. This time, the lid vibrated with it. Kade felt tears sting his eyes instantly. Not emotion, pressure. Like the air itself had become heavier. The radio whispered softly, "Welcome back, Kade." His blood went cold. He had never said his name. The highway descended toward the checkpoint ahead. Floodlights emerged through rain and fog. Concrete barricades. Tall fencing, black-armored containment guards. Above the gate hung a rusted sign barely visible beneath years of water stains. GRIMSTONE Containment District. And beneath it, Maple County. Kade stared at the words silently. According to every official record on Earth, Maple County did not exist anymore. By sunrise, 3 people had disappeared during resonance drift. Officially, only 1 report got filed. GRIMSTONE preferred smaller numbers. Smaller numbers kept people calm. Morning arrived without sunlight. The glass veil overhead shifted from black to dull gray, while condensation crawled across its surface in long streaks. Somewhere high above the city, maintenance sirens groaned through fog before fading back into static. Kade drove deeper into the containment district while artificial dawn flickered on sector floodlights 1 block at a time. The city looked worse in morning color. Night hid things. Morning revealed them. Cracks splitting building corners. Water damage beneath apartment windows. Rust bleeding down concrete walls. Black mold spreading through old ventilation shafts. People sleeping beneath tarps beside steam vents. Children carrying buckets toward filtration stations before school alarms sounded. A man hosed blood off the sidewalk outside a butcher stall while old jazz drifted softly from somewhere overhead. Nobody looked shocked by anything. That bothered Kade more than the blackout warning. The normalization. The acceptance. The city adapted to impossible things, the same way people adapted to bad neighborhoods, bad marriages, or bad knees. Slowly, without realizing survival had become surrender, the SUV rolled past a fenced schoolyard beneath armed guard towers. Children stood in straight lines while loudspeakers crackled morning announcements overhead. Attention residents, drift conditions remain elevated. Avoid lower transit tunnels until inspection teams arrive. The children barely reacted. One little boy laughed at something his friend whispered. A girl traded candy from her jacket pocket while pretending not to hear the warning. Life continued. That felt wrong, too. Kade slowed at an intersection while workers crossed the street carrying lunch buckets and tool cases. Nobody hurried. Nobody smiled much either. People here moved like they already knew how the day would end. A woman knocked ash from her cigarette beside the crosswalk and stared directly at Kade's SUV. Not curious, recognizing. That feeling crawled across his skin more often now. People looking at him like news had arrived before he did. Rotline crackled alive through the speakers. Soft trumpet, static underneath. You ain't slept yet. Kade tightened his jaw, starting to miss when radios needed electricity. The old broadcaster chuckled softly. Keep talking like that, and GRIMSTONE gonna think you flirting. Kade hated that the voice calmed him slightly. The station sounded human, exhausted, like somebody broadcasting from the bottom of a grave with a cigarette hanging from their lips. "My name's Darius, right?" Kade asked. Static hissed softly. "Used to be. That's supposed to mean? Depends how long you stay." The signal distorted briefly. For 1 second, Kade heard other voices beneath Darius. Praying laughter, crying somebody humming softly. Somebody begging for help. Then the station cleared again. "You heading toward processing?" Kade glanced at the overhead signs. "Processing District, Eastern Intake." "Yeah, bad place to start your morning? Got recommendations?" "Liquor and prayer." Kade almost smiled. Almost. The road narrowed between housing towers. Laundry lines stretched overhead while steam poured from cracked vents near the sidewalks. A woman dumped dirty mop water from a third-floor balcony. It splashed beside the SUV. "Sorry, baby," she yelled automatically. Kade lifted one hand without looking up. For half a second, the moment felt painfully ordinary. Then he noticed the stains running down the side of the building. Long black streaks beneath dozens of windows. Not paint, not water damage. Something else. Like whatever lived inside the walls had tried crawling outward. Kade looked away immediately. The farther he drove, the more his body hurt. Pressure built behind his eyes. His ears popped repeatedly. Metallic taste collected in the back of his throat. The city pressed against the senses slowly. Not attacking, accumulating. A transit train screamed overhead. Kade flinched instinctively and hated himself for it. Too tense, too tired. He rubbed both hands down his face hard enough to hurt. The lack of sleep was getting dangerous. That's what he told himself. Back in directorate training, they taught recruits how to compartmentalize fear. Separate emotion from objective. Separate guilt from memory. Separate panic from function. Useful rules, until Evelyn. The first time she laughed at his military posture, he got irritated. The second time he laughed too. The third time he stopped sitting with his back toward restaurant exits because she kept turning his chair around on purpose. "You look like you waiting for somebody to shoot the pancakes," she told him once. Kade remembered pretending to stay annoyed another 10 minutes just because her laugh kept getting louder every time he did. The memory hit him hard enough to tighten his chest. He swallowed and forced his attention back toward the road. A body hung from an electrical pole ahead. Kade slammed the brakes instinctively. The corpse swung slowly above the street beneath flickering floodlights. Male, middle-aged, bare feet, hands wired behind the pole. A cardboard sign hung from his neck. "Stop listening to the walls." People walked beneath the body without stopping. A vendor sold coffee 30 feet away. 2 teenagers argued over batteries nearby. A mother dragged groceries through puddles while her son asked for candy. Life continued around the corpse like the city had already absorbed it. Kade stared upward. The dead man's mouth had been sewn shut with black thread.
Rotline hissed softly through the speakers.
Happens every blackout cycle. Kade kept staring. Who did it? Nobody knows. That's bullshit. Darius coughed harshly. Brother, everything in GRIMSTONE becomes bullshit eventually. The corpse rotated slowly in the wind. Its shadow stretched farther across the pavement than it should have. Kade looked away immediately. The headache behind his eyes sharpened. The city ahead thickened with fog. Processing District emerged slowly through gray haze and industrial smoke. Huge concrete structures. Watchtowers, floodlights. Crowds, long intake lines wrapped around entire blocks beneath fencing and armed guards. Some people entering wore prison gray. Others wore normal clothes. Families, workers, children. Kade frowned immediately. Why are civilians in intake lines? Darius stayed quiet too long. Then, some folks born here. Kade's grip tightened around the steering wheel. Thought the county was containment only. It was. The radio crackled softly. Long time ago, Processing District smelled like bleach, sweat, engine smoke, burned plastic, and too many bodies packed too close together. Loudspeakers repeated instructions overhead through static. Remove all unauthorized communication devices. Remain visible during drift conditions. Failure to report pressure symptoms will result in detainment. A woman further down the intake line suddenly slapped her husband hard across the face. Not anger, panic. You looked at me wrong. The husband stared back exhausted. I didn't even say nothing. You did. I swear I didn't. She started crying immediately afterward. Nobody nearby reacted. Kade watched silently. Back at the directorate, they used clinical language for this kind of behavior. Emotional destabilization, cognitive slippage, pressure contamination. Standing here now, it just looked like suffering. The SUV rolled toward the final barricade. A young containment officer stepped forward holding a scanner tablet. Black woman, tired eyes, coffee stain on one sleeve, couldn't have been older than 22. She looked at Kade's clearance file and sighed immediately. Directorate, not respect. Not fear, just exhaustion. You Mercer? Kade nodded once. The officer studied him quietly. You got family in here? A question caught him slightly off guard. Yes, her expression softened for half a second. Dangerous thing to do in GRIMSTONE. My brother's still down in lower 9, she muttered quietly while checking his documents. If you see him, tell him Mom still leave the porch light on. Kade blinked once. What's his name? Doesn't matter. She handed the clearance card back. Everybody down there eventually stopped answering to it anyway. Behind her, processing alarms suddenly screamed. People flinched throughout the district. A loud metallic boom rolled somewhere underground, then another, then silence. Every guard nearby went still. The young officer whispered under her breath, "Please not this early." Kade heard it anyway. Then the speaker activated overhead. Static flooded the district hard enough to hurt. The voice that emerged sounded strained this time, like something inside the system was resisting itself. Attention GRIMSTONE residents? A long pause followed. The city seemed to lean inward, listening. Then, do not follow unfamiliar voices below street level. Static exploded violently through the loudspeakers. For one brief second, another voice forced itself underneath the transmission. Male, crying, terrified. Please don't leave me down here. Then silence. Nobody moved. Not the guards. Not the workers. Not the civilians. Even the intake lines froze. Kade looked toward the underground access tunnels beyond Processing District. Dark stairwells descended beneath the city behind fencing and concrete barriers. Cold air drifted upward from below. Not cool, cold. Different from the rest of GRIMSTONE. The kind of cold untouched by sunlight for decades. Kade stared too long. For 1 second, he thought he saw movement deep beneath the nearest stairwell. Not a person, just shape. Tall, wrong, then darkness swallowed it again. The young officer stepped backward from the barricade. Whatever you looking for down there, she said quietly. I hope you love it enough to die for it. Kade looked toward the tunnels again. Somewhere beneath this city, Evelyn was still alive. He felt sure of it. That certainty terrified him more than doubt, because GRIMSTONE already felt like the kind of place that learned what people loved most and built teeth around it.